special breakfast and class graciously sponsored by Aiki Maleh and family La'ilun Nishmat, his father, Robert Reuven Ben Rahel Hazao Baruch, as well as Yada and Marilyn Kasab, La'ilun Nishmat, her father, Ishaq Ben Bahie Cain, Alav Shalom. Iratzon to the words of Torah and Berachot, their neshamot have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Additionally, today's class sponsored by, don't tell me I have it here, Charlie and Michael Gamal, Le'ilui Nishmat, their beloved uncle, Mr. Albert Gamal, Abraham Ben Simcha, Alav Shalom. Iratzon to the words of Torah, their neshamot have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Today's Gemara discusses how should be our behavior when we go to a wedding. A person gets invited to the wedding, you go to the wedding, and usually, hopefully, you bring a gift to the Hatan and the Kala. That's wonderful. Very kind, very polite, very generous. But the Gemara seems to imply that one of the main ways of bringing happiness to the Hatan and the Kala is actually through being in the wedding and make them happy. That's why people you see sometimes they go to a wedding, besides the eating and drinking, etc., they start dancing and they jump and they hold the Hatan and they praise the Kala, etc. Why? Because there is a concept of fulfilling the mitzvah of Mesameach Hatan Bekala. So comes the Gemara and it says, what happens if a person went to the wedding, ate and drank, but didn't bring any happiness to the Hatan? What happens? The Gemara writes, Over b'chamisha kolot. He's transgressing 5 voices. What does it mean, transgressing? Thank you. What's the meaning of transgressing 5 voices? So it says here, the footnote, there is a pasuk in Irmiyah and Navi that says, Kol sason bekol simcha, kol hatan bekol kala. The voice of joy, the voice of happiness, the voice that means the praising to the groom, the praising to the bride, and at the end says, Kol omrim hodu et Hashem sevakot. The voice that says, praise the Almighty. So meaning to say that when we are bringing happiness to the groom and the bride, by default, we are praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu that put the couple together. Because it doesn't happen automatic. What do you think? Automatic, a person goes out on a date, this is their shidduch, this is their basher? For sure not. How many things go through in a relationship from the first time that they are dating until they are walking onto the chuppah? And how many hurdles they needed to overcome, like it's common in many type of relationship, that there are always scenarios and situations to be dealt with. As the Gemara, I understand, but what happens now if a person goes to the wedding, makes the Hatan and Kala happy? What is the reward? Comes the Gemara and it says, Zoche la Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give this person the easiness of understanding Torah. How many times a person sits down to learn Torah, and many times the person doesn't understand what's flying or what's going on? So comes the Gemara and it says, what is the connection between the concept of marriage and the concept of Torah? Besides that, the Torah is the marriage contract between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. Borei Olam, so to speak, is the groom. The Jewish people is basically the bride, and the Torah becomes a ketubah, like a marriage contract. Because at the end of the day, when Hatan and Kala get married, and the Hatan gives the ketubah to the Kala, basically in the ketubah, as I'm sure you may be aware of this, basically it stipulates the responsibilities that the husband must fulfill towards his wife. And really, there is not much written so much about the wife with exception of her virtues, her name, family name, father's name, etc. But the majority of what's written in the ketubah is to provide the wife a certain peace of mind, the way the Torah stipulates. So it says here, the Gemara, the Pasuk writes, in the giving of the Torah, something very interesting. Remember a few moments ago, I quoted the Pasuk from Irmiyah Navi that speaks about the sound of the groom, the sound of the bride, the sound of joy, the sound of happiness. I was about to say the sound of music. Okay, you the American one. Hazaku Baruch. Okay? Okay, relax. Right. You know, Psalms the Gemara, and it says, Vayhi bayom hashlishi v'yot haboker. This pasuk is from the Chumash that says Moshe Rabbeinu is about to give the Torah to Am Israel. Let's listen to the words. Vayhi kolot ubrakim. They were the sounds, literally. That's call number one. Vayhi kol shofar, the sound of the shofar. V'elokim ya'anenu bekol, another sound. And then another pasuk says, Bechol am roim et hakolot. And it says the Gemara, bottom line, that the Torah and marriage, both of them carry a godly connection, a godly connotation, like the neshama gets elevated. Even when the person is alive, obviously, the neshama grows spiritually through the essence of Torah. The neshama of the husband and wife supplement each other and enables the person to grow spiritually. Comes the Gemara and it goes further and it says that a person, when he gets married, ke'ilu bana ahad mihorbot Yerushalayim. Imagine yourself, the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed and all surrounding properties and areas around the Bet HaMikdash were also destroyed. But every time that a Jewish couple gets married and obviously build a home based on the foundations of Torah and mitzvot, etc., is like we are building one of the destroyed building of Yerushalayim that were destroyed when the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. Why? In the Shiva Berachot, what do we say? Binyan adeh ad. We're blessing the Hatan and the Kala that they be able to build an eternal edifice. And there is no more eternal in the aspect of building a home. And when I mean to build a home, in this case, I don't mean to build a physical home, because many people build physical homes. You travel all around the country, what do you see? People building, and people building constantly. But it says that the building that we do, it brings continuity from generation to generation, from father to son to grandson, all the way down to our days. Comes the Gemara and talks about the topic of saying hello to people. Very important. Comes the Gemara and it says, Amar Rabbi Halabo, Amar Rab Huna. It says the Gemara, a very powerful statement. And it says, Kol sheyodea b'chavero, any person that knows, shehu ragil liten lo shalom, that a person knows that this friend will say hello to you, don't wait till he says hello to you. Yagdim lo shalom. Actually, don't wait. I'm going to wait till he says hello, and then I'm going to say hello. That's the Gemara says, that is an erroneous way of thinking. It says, you see someone, say hello. I don't know to how many people I said hello since I left the apartment. I say hello to the person behind the desk. I say hello to the valet. I say hello to the guard in the front. Of course, to a lot. I don't know, I lost count already. But imagine if a person, and anyone, doesn't need to be me, but anyone says, no, if they don't say hello to me, I don't say hello to you. The Gemara says that's wrong. That's wrong. Why? It's a pasuk from the book of Tehillim. Bakesh shalom berot fehu. The person has a mission to pursue peace. Don't wait till the peace come to knock on your door. Maybe peace will never come, Haz v'shalom. Be'im natan lo velo hazir. The Gemara asks a very interesting question. What happens now if someone said hello to us and we did not respond back? And I'm not talking because you're in the middle of the Amidah. If you're in the middle of the Amidah, is understood. And if you're after Baruch She'amar, that you're not allowed to talk, and somebody say hello to you, you wave with your hand. You acknowledge the salutation. But what happens now if somebody said hello to us? I'm not praying, I'm not able to talk, but I just ignored it. Comes the Gemara and it says, Nikra Gazlan, you're a thief. Now what are you stealing? What are you stealing? Short answer, you're stealing the dignity of the person. You're stealing the dignity of the person. Where do we learn it from? There is a pasuk in Yeshaya Hanavi that says, listen to this, Be'atem bi'artem akerem gezelat he'ani bebatechem. You stole from the poor. And the question is, if he's poor, what is there to steal? Their dignity. Their dignity, the kavod. The respect to a human being. And that's why it's called it Gezelat He'ani. And it says, She'en lo kelum ela shelo hishiv al shelomo. In other words, a person, he says hello to you, and you left the person hanging. You just ignore the salute, the salutation. So how do you think the person will feel? Not good. So what, I'm chopped liver? Like Aharon HaKohen. What was the whole essence of Aharon HaKohen? Besides Shalom. But what prompted Aharon HaKohen to develop the beautiful midah of Shalom? Short answer, Ohev et HaBeriot. He loved the creations. Now, what kind of statement is he loved the creation? Imagine yourself, I ask you, oh, you're a very nice creation. Who speaks like that? What are you, a robot? You're a creature? You're a human being. So why did Aharon, in the Mishnah says creation, says Aharon HaKohen, for me, the fact that a person was created by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's enough. It's deep what I'm just saying. Sometimes we calculate what type of person is he, what type of person should be, what kind of person is not. Or we suddenly became now experts in humanity. Aharon HaKohen says, stop wasting your time. If God created a person, it means that a Kadosh Baruch Hu has belief and faith in the person. Like I saw the other day, I may have mentioned it in one of the classes. What does it mean when a person celebrates the birthday? That a Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I need you in the world. I have a mission for you in the world. And only you is able to fulfill it. That's a very deep thought to put into our mind. So bottom line, practical lesson of the Gemara today. You go to a wedding, bring happiness to the Hatan. Happiness, besides the check or the envelope. You know, in Israel, when you go to a wedding, there is a box, like a safe. And everybody comes in, you got to put the envelope, right? Inside. I'm not sure if in America this concept exists. Hazako Baruch, I know that, I know. But today with Venmo and Zelle, you know, condition, they're writing a check. But we still, some of us still write checks upon need. But in a more serious note, the Gemara says, don't just go. Make your presence count. Besides eating and enjoying and having a good time, go to the Hatan, greet him, wish him well, dance with him if you can, and even foresee physical limitations you may not, but make the effort to wish him well and to tell them, I'm so happy for you, you marry a wonderful kala, beautiful berachot. Believe me, the words help. I'm not saying that you're going to give words instead of an envelope. You need both. Don't be a hakam. You know how many times I got a thank you note? Beautiful. But a hatan needs both. Why? Because studying the life. Now, the second lesson that the Gemara mentioned was make sure to be respectful and polite with people, especially saying hello, even though you may not agree, and it could be we agree to disagree, but that doesn't remove the basic laws of the rejeres, of proper respect, interaction with people, the way we learned yesterday in the afternoon class. Next, Zohar of today discusses the opening statement of the parasha of today. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, bo el Paro, ki ani ichbati el libo. We know this fascinating parasha, which technically speaking, parashat bo, and specifically the middle of the parasha, should have been the opening statement of the Torah. The opening statement of the Torah is what? Bereshit. But you know that between Bereshit and Perashat Bo, we learn most history. We don't have halachot. We have a handful of mitzvot, be fruitful, circumcision, gidan nashe. But the real bulk of mitzvot actually starts in this week's Perashah. And that's exactly what Rashi writes in Rashi on Pasuk number 1 of Perashah Bereshit, that the Torah should have started from the middle of Perashat Bo, that teaches us the laws of Rosh Chodesh. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. So that should have been the first opening statement of the Torah. So then Rashi asks, if that's the case, why do we have to have 15 perashiot until we come down to the real deal, which is the mitzvot of the Torah? Rashi answers, to tell the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator of the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Eretz Israel to Am Israel. That is the main reason why the Torah, look in Rashi later, first verse, first chapter, first pasuk of Bereshit bara Elokim, discussing the relationship, not only that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with Am Israel, but how HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, so to speak, is the one who managed that Am Israel is the rightful owner of Eretz Israel and Yerushalayim Eir HaKodesh, obviously. This is something that up to a few years ago, it was debatable. There were many nations and many countries in the world who said, no, no, no. And Baruch Hashem, in the last few years, we have seen how many countries and how many governments are moving their embassies, right, to Yerushalayim. Why? Because Yerushalayim is the undisputed capital of Eretz Israel. Nice. So comes the Zohar Kadosh and it says that in Shamayim, I'm going to give you the introduction, very interesting. It says as follows, in Shamayim, there are, I should say, proper English, there are different groups of Malachim. We know this. There are an elite group of Malachim, Gabriel, Michael, Rafael, Uriel, Rashi Tevot, Gemara. That's how you remember them, easy to remember. And then we have Malachim that we created by our deeds, by our actions. Sometimes the Malachim that we create are from the good side. Unfortunately, the opposite is the truth. And the Zohar Kadosh introduces today's parasha by telling us that in Shamayim, there are Malachim that become our best advocates, meaning to say they protect us, so to speak, they vouch for us in a good way. But unfortunately, the Zohar Kadosh says there is also a group of Malachim that they do is accusing the person, prosecutors or defense attorneys. So the Zohar Kadosh writes and it says, nevertheless, even though that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows all of the above, but there is always good to have a melitz yosher. Melitz yosher means a good advocate. Pashut, a good advocate. How many times people ask me, Rabbi, can you introduce my family to this family for a shidduch, etc.? That's a very, right. In other words, help a bit. So the Zohar Kadosh says that this wonderful group of malachim, even though Akadosh Baruch Hu does not need reminders, but because they become, let's say, yosher, because they become good advocates for our behalf, Hakadosh Baruch Hu lends the ear to listen to the praises of Am Israel. Comes the Zohar Kadosh and it says, being that way, it's imperative, the Zohar Kadosh writes, that a person should make the effort of constantly gravitating to the good side. I'll tell you something that I saw yesterday. I didn't say it publicly, but I shared it with someone. You know, in yesterday's parasha, we find a fascinating example of the following statement. I'm just finding the verse so I can show you exactly what the great Rabbi Meir Shapiro, the one who established the Daf Yomi, mentioned about yesterday's parasha. So the pasuk talks about how Moshe and Aharon, right here, Moshe and Aharon went to Paro, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yashlech lifnei Paro, yehi letanin. Take your staff, take your mateh, throw it on the ground, and it will become a tanin. Tanin, there is different opinions. What kind of animal is this? And according to what I read yesterday, this refers to the crocodile. Okay? Yes. Alligator. Hazako Baruch, the Florida has plenty of them. Okay? That's nice. And the pasuk says, Vayashlech Aharon and Matehu. Aharon casted the staff in front of Paro and his servants, and it became the tanin. Vayikra gam Paro, and they did exactly the same. Vayivla mate Aharon et matotam, and the staff of Aharon swallowed their mate. And the great rabbi asked the question, I don't understand. Didn't the pasuk says that the staffs of the Egyptians became the alligator or became this creature? And how come that Aharon swallowed the staff? Weren't they animals? It says, the great rabbi, and it says as follows, that this pasuk teaches us the importance of the person gravitating towards good. And he explains, when the mate was under the possession of the Egyptians, it became an alligator, so to speak. It became an animal. But once it came to Aharon, it became mate. You understand the difference? In other words, if you're going to gravitate towards Paro and his accomplices, you're going to become a snake. You're going to become a snake. But you gravitate towards Moshe and Aharon, you're going to become Mateh HaElokim. You're going to become godly. Fascinating Hidush. I saw it yesterday. It says, wow. Fascinating. And even though we know this, in other words, it's like the Chavat HaLevavot brings down and it says, like a person, for example, he brings this mashal. If you walk into a store that sells meat or fish, for example, how are you going to smell? Like meat or fish. But if you go to a perfume store, how are you going to smell? Like perfume. That's exactly what the great Chavat HaLevavot writes, and that's what Ramey Shapiro wrote in yesterday's parasha. If you're going to go towards Paro and his gangsters, you're going to become a snake. But if you follow Moshe and Aharon, you're going to become a righteous tzaddik. Continues further the Zohar Kadosh. Baruch haba. Repeat that again. Mehila? Yes. Almost. It's not me, it's the words of the Zohar Kadosh that says that in every generation, every Hakam has a spark of Moshe. That's it. Obviously, no human can be compared to Moshe. The Pasuk says in the Torah. But when you connect to the Hachamim, to the Torah, to the good people, by default, didn't we learn in the Perashat of Korah, when the Torah talks about the relationship between the neighbors, the relationship between the neighbors. In Birkot HaShachar, you say it every day. Mishachen Ra. Save me from a bad neighbor. Why? I live in my apartment. The neighbor lives in their apartment. True, but that closeness is so dangerous at time that can influence the person. How many times people want to do something because the neighbor did it? Look, my neighbor bought a car or leased a car. I need to have the same. Oh, they changed. Jealousy, of course. Okay, keep up with the Jones. That's what he's saying, right? Or with the Cohens. No, okay, don't take it personal, okay? Okay, Hamavdil. Hamavdil. Yeah, your following is something good. Hazal Baruch. And that's why when the Torah talks about the story of Korah, what does it say? Oy Rasha, oy Shcheno. Now, why the neighbors pay the price? Because they're on the same boat. Once you imitate them, once you gravitate towards them, by default, you're going to absorb. So it's imperative, and this is a lesson for everyone. And I tell this to the kids of the Knis, and I ask them how things are in school, etc. I don't see them every day because they're in school. I see them at night in the program, etc. And I always tell them the same thing. Make sure to gravitate around good friends and good influences. Because as much as we think that parents influence the children, friends also have a huge influence. And sometimes, if it's not channeled properly, it could be more influence than the parents. Sure. You lucky, because Baruch Hashem, all your kids are grown up. But speak to your children. I see it. We all went through it. Different generations, different times. No Kal Vachomer. No, forget about Kal Vachomer. No need to Kal Vachomer ni Gezerah Shavah. It's just to be open and realistic. Next. Beautiful Hidush by the great Hacham Meir Shapira. Alav Shalom is the one who activated the beautiful worldwide program known as the Daf Yomi, that unites the Jewish people through the powerful concept of Gemara learning every day. Okay, the next part of today's class, just 1 second. I'm going to keep it short and sweet and mature due to the young audience that we have in the room. The halakha of today discusses how appropriate is the concept of a person preserving their distance from the opposite gender. Obviously, we're not talking about your wife, your mother, your children, your grandmother, but it says anything outside of that circle or even inside of that circle, it needs to be done with respect and with the proper guidelines of modesty. Why? Because Haz v'Shalom, when it comes to crossing lines, there is no insurance policy about that. The Gemara writes, En apotrophos la'arayot. There is no insurance to say, you know what, I know how to control myself. I can handle it. I know better. Greater people say, no names, because then I need to deal with the side effects. Greater people had challenges and they have to deal with the consequences. What do you think Yosef HaSadik in Egypt went through? Big nisyonot. Big nisyonot. We just heard the shout out about David HaMelech and others. Great tzaddikim throughout history, they went through it. And therefore the halakha writes in the name of the Rambam, Lo tikrebu legalot arba. Keep your distance. That's why in the world of shidduchim, it's a required. It's not a suggestion. It's a requirement to be shomer negi'ah. Shomer negi'ah literally means that there is no physical contact until the Hatan and Kala get married. And even after they get married, there is also a distance, specifically during the time of Nida, which is the time of the year, the time of the Shovavim, that we reinforce this essential foundation in Jewish life, because at the end of the day, as we mentioned on Friday, the topic of Taharat HaMishpacha, the topic of family purity, we explained that why is it called family purity instead of calling it the purity of the wife, Taharat HaIsha, because at the end of the day, the wife is the one who goes to the mikveh, to the month-to-month scenario, etc. And the short answer is that that mitzvah that is being observed in a faithful manner not only brings holiness to the relationship between husband and wife, but actually brings holiness and sanctity to the entire family. Why? Because the marriage and the home now, it's based not only on kashrut, not only on Shabbat, not only on proper dress code, but actually carries something that a Kadosh Baruch Hu proper is the one that benefits from this concept. What does it mean? A Kadosh Baruch Hu benefits as Kadosh Baruch Hu releases his beracha to come into the homes, that there is a certain level of godliness, a certain level of holiness. And therefore the Rambam writes that a person needs to be very, very careful. And even though he says, the Rambam, quoting a pasuk that says, Lo ta'asu, it says that many times Goim allowed certain things to happen, and they call it, we are in the 2025 generation. It happened to me not long ago. It's natural. Somebody mentioned something and the person throwing that statement. What's the big deal? We live in the 2025 year. In the year 2025. You know, you're lucky that I'm a calm person. Baruch Hashem. Okay. But his future wife wasn't happy with that statement. He wasn't happy. Say what Ma'aseh Goim. That's exactly what the Rambam wrote 1,000 years ago. The Rambam says, don't think that because society accepts it, automatically we follow that. Society accepts a lot of things that we all know from day one that they are forbidden. So the Rambam writes that a person needs to have self-control in their interaction with the opposite gender, not only with strangers, but even with your closer relatives. You need to build your boundaries. I know that is easier said than done in some scenarios. You know, I saw something the other day outside of the synagogue, obviously, Baruch Hashem, and I went up to the person and I said to the person, you know, I'm very surprised. You know, what happened to Shomer Negiah protocols? He said, no, it's our tradition. I said, what tradition? Halacha Moshe Sinai or from the Yetzer Hara? Hazako Baruch. So we need to be careful. Kahal Kadosh is not a joke. Why? Because there is the prohibition of Nida. You know, why Shomer Negiah, which is a common term utilized for the topic of Shituchim. Shomer Negiah means we don't touch. That's basically what it is. We develop the relationship from the heart, with talking, with understanding, with dialoguing, and that promotes a much healthier relationship than a relationship is based on physical and hormonal reaction. And not only that, a person must remember this, that a girl, a young lady, she starts developing from a child to a teenager, from a teenager to a young lady getting ready to get married, maybe for the past 10 years, she has been with Nida, with the impurity, because single girls cannot go to the mikveh until they get married. And therefore, when a young man dating touches a young girl, he's touching nidah. And that's a Torah prohibition. Every time. Haz v'shalom. Again, we're creating an awareness in this particular class of today because this is the menu of the day. I did not hear anybody complaining about the sambusak or the shakshuka and the rugalach and the ba'alawa if there is any leftover or whatever. You have the delicious breakfast. Everybody was happy, really, right? So this is the menu of the day. Maybe there's somebody in the world who needs to listen to the Rambam of today in the halachot. And since we are in the period of the time in Jewish law known as Shobabim, which are weeks of amnesty, that's a beautiful part that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the opportunity to reset and to be more makpid. And maybe Baruch Hashem, somebody or many people may are happily married. I'm happy to hear that. But maybe an improvement or enhancement on family purity, etc., can be activated. And this is the zechut that Am Israel has these weeks, because the weeks of the Perashiot, from Perashat Shemot till Perashat Mishpatim, that deals with all of the topic of the slavery in Egypt, the redemption from Egypt, the receiving of the Torah, it's basically like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is pressing the reset button in Am Israel. And therefore, since part of the miracles, as the Zohar mentioned, in the beginning of Perashat Shemot, right here, that some of the zechuyot, some of the merits that the Jewish people had in order to merit Yesiat Misraim. Remember, we know the three basic ones. They did not change the name, right? The language and the dress code. These are the three that people know. Shemam, Leshonam, Malbusham. That's the three ones. But there are three more, the Zohar says. What were they? Number one, that no Jew was involved with a Gentile lady. Zero. And the ladies neither, with the exception of the isolated case, that was an accident. But that accident was prompted, why? Because exactly what the Rambam says. Therefore it says, don't make noise, don't make comments, don't look, etc. Exercise self-control. So what happened with this lady in Egypt? One case. She was violated by an Egyptian. Why? Because her personality allowed it. Too much. That's why the name given to her, and I say it because the Torah says it, Shelomit Bat Divri. What's the meaning of that name? It's not a name. Shelomit means Sheshoelet Shalom Kulam. Everyone she saw on the street. Remember, we mentioned in the Gemara how important it is to say good morning to people, but she didn't say just good morning. Say good morning, how are you, ta ta ta. Over. She crossed the line verbally. And Divri, she was talkative. Even though you may say, Rabbi, ladies talk more than men. It is true. Nobody disagrees. That's a Gemara that says. Okay? But there are ways of talking and there are ways of talking. Don't you think that when I come to shul or I leave the shul, I don't see ladies? But respectfully, Shabbat Shalom, 2 words. Unless I know there is something that I need to ask, how is your husband? Is he out of the hospital? Or on another matter? Shabbat Shalom. Zeu ze. Dayenu. Even though I have meetings, okay, but I build guidelines and my office knows it. All the time. Why? If the halakha tells me, build your boundaries. What do you think? That we all are tzaddikim? Maybe some of you are. I told you the story what happened to me a few years back. Funny story, but it's a real story related to the topic of today. Come from the house to come to the knis. I meet somebody of the community. We meet at the gate, and he tells me, Rabbi, don't look to the left because the Yetzer Hara is coming. I said, okay. I look at the right. I said, don't look at the right because the Yetzer Hara is also coming. So what do? He says, we look down. And guess what? The Yetzer Hara was on the floor. There was a magazine on the floor. On the left and on the right, they were coming towards us. So he laughed and he says, this is what the Ramban, right? The Ramban writes that when you walk on the street, there is no concept of looking around all over. Just walk normal. And I also saw something fascinating that a person, listen to this, that a person is driving, okay? And you see the Yetzer Hara close by. You know what I mean, right? I don't have to spell it out. Okay? Hazako Baruch says, don't look at them. Lower your eyes. Lower your eyes. Obviously, if you're driving, is an issue. No, always should check on the brakes. But I'm saying, look down. In other words, turn your head. That's what I do. I'm driving suddenly, like he said, the Yetzer Hara is in front of you. Okay? You don't drive with a blindfold. So look to the side and make a personal prayer. Because at that moment that the Yetzer Hara is knocking on your windshield, so to speak, and you ignore the call of the Yetzer Hara, it's an Et Ratzon. It's a moment that Shamayim sees, wow, look at this fellow. The Yetzer Hara is in front of him, and sometimes the Yetzer Hara comes in groups because they all have habrutot to walk around the circle and to run and all the inyanim. I don't have to spell it because Daila Hachamim Birmizah, but it says that that moment that the Nisayon is in front of the person and the person acted to avoid it, the gates of Shamayim are open to the person. I'll tell you one more story. I said this story, I think, once in the past, but it was about a person who needed a job. He needed a job. Somebody who relocated from South America, needed a job, spoke the language, great salesman, wonderful fellow. And he says, if you know somebody that is looking for an employee, etc., let me know. I said, okay, I keep my eyes open. The next day he tells me, Rabbi, Baruch Hashem, I found a job. I said, I'm happy. You found a job? I'm happy. I don't have to look further. 3 days later, Rabbi, I need a job. He says, I don't understand. You told me on Monday you had a job. Yeah, but they never told me that the nature of the job, the selling products of the job, will bring me into daily challenges of Irat Shamayim. I don't have to go further. So there, Hazako Baruch. So therefore, I took a step back because my neshama was suffering. And Baruch Hashem, a week later, he found a great job. He was able to pray, learn, go to work, bring decent parnasa to the home. And Baruch Hashem, this lasted for many, many years. And this is definitely a person needs to have this in mind. To this point today in America, I'm sure that it exists in many places, but there are new programs that are training Am Israel how to balance the work environment with Irat Shamayim. Because a lot of the hiccups, a lot of unfortunate challenges that a person goes through is specifically in the workforce. Don't go, do me a favor, please. Daila Hacham Birmizah. Daila Hacham Birmizah. Says a person in the work environment also needs to have fences. Because sometimes you're spending sometimes more time in the office than at home. You understand what I'm saying, right? That's it. Always doors open. Always the doors are to be open. Even when I meet with people, open door. See-through glass, video camera on, and during business hours, I mean during office hours. and my office staff is trained. 15, 20 minutes into the meeting, that's the code, Rabbi, 20 minutes. We learn from the Hachamim, and we learn from those that pay a heavy price, destroy their marriage, destroy their life without understanding. Huh? So there is a program. It's called Da'ehu. Da'ehu. Bechol derachecha Da'ehu. Is actually a pasuk from Shlomo HaMelech that says, in all your ways you should know God. Means even in the world of business, and they send like a daily, every other day, they send a message, and exactly like he said a few days ago or a week ago, they send a message, and it says that when you deal with females in the office, don't call them by the first name. Call them by Mrs. It's not easy sometimes, but that's definitely one of the things that they said. And even when they need to interact, do it with respect. Keep your distance, physical distance as well. Okay, to be respectful and to be polite, it's required. But don't cross the boundaries. Why? Because when it comes to this topic, there is no boundaries. The Yesera will find a tiny, tiny opening to start crawling into the Neshama, and eventually we pay the price. Now, anybody has an iPhone here? Can I use it a minute? I think I remember the website. Let me see if I'm able to get it. Can you open it for me? I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it for you. But let me write it in the yeshiva language. Thank you so much. Let me see if I find it quickly. Give me a moment. Hayim Tovim ul Shalom. I got it. Oh, it's already in your right here. You have it. I'm going to write it down. Elevate your work day. I'm going to write the website. I subscribe to these already because it gives you beautiful messages, suggestions, etc. DOEIHU.org. Here is the website. DOEIHU. And here is the website. It says elevate your workday. So let's say here, if we are able to have the one quick halakha to understand. Okay, now you got to look into the. Okay, you register, you're going to get it on a regular basis. I do it. I read it. I try to apply it to the best of my abilities. Even though Synagogue is a beautiful place and holy place, but guess what? The Yesera works everywhere. It's not like a Wi-Fi. You don't have Wi-Fi connect. It doesn't bother you. Believe me, without the Wi-Fi, the Yesera helps us as well. And with this, you can subscribe, and you're going to get a daily or every other day halakha connected to sanctity. Thank you, in the workplace. Okay, my good friends. Thank you, Ike. Thank you, Yadan, his wife Marilyn, for the sponsorship of today's class. Iratzon that to the words of Torah and Berachot, Hashem should elevate the neshama of your father, and I believe the neshama of your father as well. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen be'amen. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Israel.